Can you give me the gallery? Or does it not work? Very good. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and all the other parts of the world. There's got to be somebody in the Greenwich Mean Time, perhaps. So this evening's Dharma talk is titled See the Impulse. I think I added something else to that too, but I very situationally see the impulse to sing something. Yes, sing Irish tunes or songs or tunes. See the impulse. So that's just in honor of St. Patty's Day. So the idea there is to see the impulse, see the impulse before the impulse gets its hooks into you and takes you on a journey to do this, do that, not do this, not do that. Any kind of directionality, including stopping, including moving forward, moving away, alternating your observation, your seeing to go within, turn within and ignore what is happening in front of you. There's so many different ways of doing that. The ignorance is sometimes called prejudice because we don't really see that we're prejudiced. We don't see that we're ignoring. It's extremely subtle and it's tied up with the personality and the way in which any given individual grasps at an identity and uses what they're ignoring, what they're accepting, what they're rejecting, and so on to substantiate, reify, and artificially support that situation. So the idea here is to see that. When I say that, when I say see it, it's not about stopping it. That's a misunderstanding as far as I can see, and I'm talking out of what I see, not out of what I know. You hear me say over and over again, at least the last year or so. And so if you see it, the impulse, the first impulse, that's the first, then the next impulse, the first impulse, and then the next impulse. There's an impulse, and then there's another impulse. And it's they get layered up like that very quick out of hope for something better and fear of something worse, to put it simply. So the idea of the way I'm addressing this or saying this is see the impulsive quality of the mind rather than reacting to it, seeing the impulse and rather than reacting to the impulse to stop it. Oh, I'm starting to get mad, or I'm starting to grasp this or push that or shut down on this or open or closed or whatever it may be. The impulse, because of the need of the self-centered mind, the ego mind, the seventh consciousness, the narcissism to feel like it, he, she, they, or whatever is someone, has some kind of validation out of being resisted, out of being approved, and out of being ignored or shut down. So those three and all of the nuances that show up and make it more difficult for us to see fundamentally the impulse. The impulse just, I don't know if there is a gap there. The impulse is so fast. This shows up and we do this. This shows up and we do that. This shows up and we do that. So by practicing shikantaza, at least that's how it looks here, to sit down and watch the impulsive mind continually show up, it's continually fishing. That hope and fear is continually fishing for a validation, reification, justification, incorporation of your self-centeredness. Let's make it a corporation. Make it a not-for-profit corporation. That always sounds a lot better than some kind of self-centered, money-grubbing corporation, banker. So it is about, as I've said many times, I'm saying it now, it's about seeing that, and it's not about seeing it three levels back. So you may have to observe the first few layers of that without interfering. I'm not saying there might not come a time where you couldn't just stop that. Just don't do that. But it appears to me that needs to be out of a radical and fundamental understanding or clarity or seeing of the initial surge to grasp, the initial surge to reject, passion, aggression, and the initial surge or the immediacy of showing up as blocking off or distracting. As you hear me say a lot, it takes a while to do that. It takes a lot of disappointment. It seems to take a lot of sense of a failure from the point of view of the self-centered mind, the narcissistic mind. And the sophistication, I don't know of another word to use, that the ego, the self-centered mind, begins to develop because it is so greedy about success. It will practically settle for any little crumb of, I think maybe I'm getting somewhere. I seem to be more clear. I seem to be less this, more that, more this, less that, looking for some kind of a credential. If it's Buddha Dharma, there's no credential. That being said, that doesn't mean that there aren't, if you're training your mind, you're sitting down and holding still and looking at your mind for long hours every day or every few days or whatever it may be. It doesn't mean that the awareness, because it is all pervasive and is not particularly ignoring too much, at least if you've been sitting a lot and endeavoring to just watch the movement, then you may actually see, without it being particularly turned into a merit badge or some kind of a feeling of a meritorious accomplishment, you may begin to see where you listen a little bit more than you were listening, say, a year or two ago. You seem to be able to, I'll use the word tolerate, some people's abrasive difficulty or abrasive quality of being around them. You seem to be able to tolerate that or see more clearly why that person or how that person is trying to keep from suffering. So therefore you tend to get a big load of it. And that may be an actual aggressive load. Some people get rid of their aggression by actually not doing anything with the aggression, just laying on it. It's aggression. Other people do it with humor. Some people actually, that's the only way you can get the aggression out, is to joke with somebody or make fun of people. Some famous comedians use their deep, submerged anger to be funny. We can think of a few of those. This doesn't mean that all expression coming out of aggression is necessarily going to be funny. It takes the causes and conditions that arise there. It takes, what would you say, a sense of timing about that in order to make that what is shows up as aggression to be actually humor also. Quite often, quite frequently, if you look deeply in that, you see intense prejudice going on. So coming back to the title, everybody get out their tin whistle. We're about ready to play. And Sokuzan, do you have your what's that thing he plays? Bagpipes. Yeah. Do you have your bagpipes?
Yep, we're all tuned up.
Huh?
Yes, we're all tuned up to play.
All tuned up to play. Okay. Well, that's good. So we'll probably do that at the end. And if we can get any other musicians to join in, we'll maybe, I don't know if Mason's going to come on, but Mason plays a lot of Irish tunes. And perhaps he'll play us a tune at the end. But for right now, let's go back to the first part of that. And that is to fundamentally see If you see it fundamentally, it will have not developed any hooks or claws or legs. It'll just be the bulk of that agreement, of that objection, of that neutral, positive, negative, neutral. Any positionality, even neutrality, is a position, because it needs to shut down on something in order to what? Make the assumption that you're neutral. I don't care one way or another. So I'm not saying it's always that way. So the practice part of it seems to be being able to, over time, to not particularly get taken in by the fundamental desire of wanting to feel good, wanting to be successful, wanting to have some kind of, at some point, we'll just settle for some kind of relative feeling that is, at least we feel good, at least we're getting better, at least we're improving, at least. It's not that those are wrong. It's just that it's not that you couldn't do that, but it seems to be necessary to be very aware that you're operating in that way. You may have to do that for a while, just like someone on the open heart today was asking about. I don't know how they put it, but I don't know who was it that said, is it okay to start out with
Heather?
Was Heather, yeah. Start out with the calm abiding, or shine, or very simple mindfulness, dwelling in tranquility. Of course it is. Should be done situationally. The emphasis is on shikantaza, or just precisely this, just exactly this, just this. And how do you do that? Don't do anything but receive. But you may have to do some work in another direction for a while, and that's where it would be coming out of your understanding, your awareness as to how much, say, even closed eye meditation you might have to do in order to get some kind of sense of presence, so that you can open your eyes. Sometimes people are having a great deal of difficulty. I'll even say, well, close your eyes. Might even do a mantra, possibly, although mantras aren't necessarily meant to soothe you. Each person, when I say see the impulse, each person's viewing of how that looks is going to have a different, be a different manifestation. So there's no way that I personally can tell you how that's going to look. But using the word see it, which can show up in any of the sense fields, especially in the mind. See means to observe. Seeing isn't something you're doing. It's something you might have the intention to see, but the seeing itself isn't particularly intentional. You're receiving whatever is showing up. And then that gets turned around into the impulse when you like some things, you don't like other things, and other things you're totally neutral, you don't care about them. Anything like that is a form, different ways of shutting down, or interpreting. And something hasn't even come in the door yet, and already you're describing how it looks, what it's wearing, its gait, any odor that it's giving off. And I'm being a little silly, but I'm just saying we're already all about that. We're too frightened of the unknown, because the unknown frightens that aspect of the consciousness called, in the Yogacara tradition, the seventh consciousness, or that area that is completely paranoid about everything. And so we need some kind of a handle on the situation. So just observe insofar as you can. And if you find that you're shutting down, then just observe that you're shutting down, but make it as much as possible about receiving, about awareness and receiving whatever's showing up. And that there might be little descriptions with that kind of come with the territory. But usually if you see something show up and there's a description, that's actually a projection. That's something you're doing to it. And it is a very subtle way of hiding out from what it is. Because what it is, if you know what it is, this is called ignorance. I'm happy to take questions on this or anything else as we go along, if you have something come up. If you don't, I'll keep chattering.
Carl Bowing,
Carl.
how do we catch the beginning of those impulses without developing stability of mind?
Yes, excellent question. It's just a matter of repetition. And any stability that comes up just happens, then don't push it away. Don't necessarily go into the other direction and say, oh, this is starting to feel like stability. It must be spiritual materialism. Everything is an illusion. Everything is illusory. Even the most solid, secure support system, including the Buddha's Dharma. It is a raft that eventually comes apart once you've ridden across the river Styx. More?
Trungpa often talks about the third skandha as perception impulse. How do those two go together?
Very good. It's just, well, I don't know how he would say it. I mean, I know I've read that, but I don't have anything memorized. But the way it looks to me is there is a perception, which is the receiving part of it. You perceive something, and what you fundamentally perceive, the very fundamental perception, which is talked about in Yogacara, is perception only. Perception, no impulse. It doesn't mean the impulse is missing. It means that there's a perception and there's no a reaction or impulsiveness to it. You perceive something, you immediately know what it is, know what it isn't, know what it should be, and that gets processed. Form is the body, basically, form, feeling, and then perception, impulse, form, feeling, perception, concept. Or the next one is we start to think about what we just perceived. But the first, just before the thoughts arise, there's the impulse to grasp or reject. And we're not sure why, but anything that we see coming up, we need to get some kind of stability out of. Is it good? Is it bad? Should I open the door? Should I close the door? Should I ignore the door? Which is another way of what? Closing the door. So perception impulse, it's a way of talking about it. And there's traditional ways down through the centuries that this has been laid out and discussed. More?
Sokuzan Bowing, sometimes you say when you see it, you won't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so this seems like a silly example, but if you're eating a bowl of soup and
Me? I don't eat soup.
Okay, well, what do you eat?
Well, I eat soup.
Let's say there's a bowl of soup in front of you and
What do you eat?
huh?
Okay, good. Go ahead. Don't stop.
There's a spoon and a fork by the bowl and you find yourself eating with the spoon. Do you know what that is?
Well, you can know what it is relatively. So we're not trying to get rid of relative truth. So we're not trying to say, oh, I don't know what this is. We're not talking about some kind of insanity. No, you're very clear about relative truth. But you don't know what this, you know what it is relatively, but you don't know what it is fundamentally. And that not knowing what it is fundamentally is that's how insight starts to show up. You're actually willing, you could say it this way, you're actually willing to be all done with this grasping, rejecting, and shutting down situation. Even though you see it continue to happen because it's dependently arisen, you can't get away from dependent origination, but you can stop, what is it saying? Add fuel to the fire. You can just stop joining in. You can watch the rotation. And if it gets really fast, you watch. If it gets really slow, you watch. If it goes away, you watch. No conclusion, no conclusion, no conclusion. Nothing to keep the self-centeredness moving. And the astonishing thing about this is there's no result. So if you realize your true nature, You might not feel like it, but I sometimes say, if you realize, you won't know it. The conventional mind will not know that. So you're pretty much stuck with your foolish self. Come and get me.
Shoto bowing.
Yes, go ahead, Choto.
If we won't realize fruition, why would we walk the path?
Did I say you wouldn't realize fruition?
That's my paraphrase of what you said.
That's a terrible paraphrase. Aren't you a monk?
Yes.
Okay, take another swipe at it. I'll wait.
I don't remember what you said.
You don't remember what you said or what I said?
Yes.
Oh, I said take another swipe at it. Does it feel like I'm mocking you?
Yes.
No, I'm not mocking you. This is called teaching. You're called a student. And you're a monk and I'm a monk. So we're on equal footing. Go back to that question about I have to paraphrase you, but if we're not going to realize our true nature, see that we've realized our true nature, why would we even do that? Am I close?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it interesting? And I'm 80 years old and I can remember that and you couldn't remember it?
Can I cite an excuse?
Yeah.
I had my first COVID shot today.
All right. You're totally forgiven, man. Good for you. So let's work with that, because that's a very, I'm teasing you a little bit, but that's a very valid question. And the way I'm going to respond to that is when I say you won't know it, as I'm saying that dynamic of the mind, that self-centered aspect of the mind that knows and doesn't know, or validates or does anything relative in the relative world. That part of the mind, if there is realization, that part of the mind, it might be running its mouth or something, or it might be opening its ears, or could be doing any kind of relative thing. But it no longer is any. There's no assuming there is a driver's seat. It no longer has access to what this is anymore. And what does have access to this, what this is called, for the lack of a better word, use the relative word, is wisdom or Buddha nature. And the Buddha nature doesn't acquire information. It's just wisdom. The elseness or the otherness is not there. So one just functions out of. It doesn't ignore relative truth, but all the relative truth that shows up is wisdom. And so what you're seeing, things come and go, and right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, and pain and pleasure, and the one who is realized sees the same thing. They can experience this. They have the same nerve endings, so they're not different. So they're, in one sense, they're the same. So what's different? Is there a difference? Find out what's different. But the reason you would follow this path without any guarantees is most of the guaranteed paths are relative and have to do with gaining idea, getting somewhere, accomplishing something, being great, being Julius Caesar, or being Charles Manson, or whatever end of the spectrum you fall on, that's trying to get something, be powerful.
Nice show bowing.
Nice show.
Can we recognize enlightenment in another? Bowing.
Only if you're awake. This doesn't mean that that not being awake, that you won't meet someone who because of their style or the chemistry between you and that person, something doesn't resonate. That's happened to me a few times. Meeting the Trungpa Rinpoche, but it's to the ego mind when it's along for the ride is terrified of that kind of a roller coaster. But then the inspiration to be clear, to be sane, to be sincere, to be genuine, to no longer look for something else. What's going to work? What's going to work? What's right? What's wrong? What's true? What's false? And you realize that in my situation, and it could be different for everyone, I realize that I have to be this person's student. I have to study under this person. I never even asked him to be my teacher, be my guru, or I never asked him. It was just obvious to me. I never thought that he might want to know that. He probably could tell by the way I functioned around him. Or not, I don't know. He might have, when I left the interview with him, he might have thought, shook his head and thought, oh, well, it's nice that he's at least trying, but that guy's good luck. I can hear him saying that as I went outside the door. Good luck. Yikes. Different with everyone. Some people are going to have that, some kind of a situation. Some people are not scared out of their wits already. So there's no right way for that to occur. Further questions?
Instructions, you'll say to look at the brush like we've never seen it before.
Yes.
How does that relative not knowing, or what does that relative not knowing have to do with ultimate not knowing?
It's just an edit. It's like shikantaza, sit down, beginner's mind. Just look at the wall, like the feeling of what is this all about? What am I doing here? It's not such a it's not something you have to particularly concoct or generate. Something that just happens spontaneously. And then other times you sit down, there's nothing reliable there. Sometimes you sit down and you're just really happy that you have something like this, a safe space where you can sit down and just do nothing, just be here for a few hours. You might have to sit quite a bit to have that kind of a, almost kind of a luxurious feeling in a way of just not having to do anything. Don't have to talk to anybody. Don't have to do anything. Just sit and receive the mind. Receive whatever shows up, which is, of course, the mind. More?
Zen bowing. Do we have to relatively not know before we can have some ultimate not knowing show up?
Well, it's all right to be, I mean, it doesn't mean you can't be full of yourself. We're all full of ourselves. And that doesn't have to go away. You just have to see that it's unreal. So thinking that you have to it's common. People talk about getting rid of their ego or this is just egotistical, and people slow themselves down by spending an approach to ego that is based on getting rid of or materialism or getting rid of the issue rather than seeing fundamentally what it is. And so maybe a little bit of that, I think it would show up differently with different people. Everyone is so, I'm sure you've noticed, everyone is so, just when we get together to study the Dharma, study the Lankavatara Sutra, the Sambhina Mochana Sutra, Heart Sutra, whatever, and talk about that, or study the works of Dogen. My goodness, I mean, he's similar to Rinpoche with a different style. Then he talked out of both sides of his mouth at once. Relative truth, absolute truth. And it's like, what? So maybe some of that will show up for you or for others, and then others not that way at all. Different kind of a different Irish jig.
Michael bowing.
Yes, sir.
What's not real about our suffering?
Well, it's relatively real. It's relative. It has to do with nerve endings, and it has to do with the mind stream that worries about what's going to happen next. That has an understanding of past and future based on believing in the structure of relative truth, that this is all there is. It's called materialism. Most of the world is running on some kind of materialism, some of them doing a more horrible job than others. So it's relatively real. What the unreal part, the part that it needs to be looked at from this perspective, other teachers might work with us differently, probably do, is to see that there's no identity experiencing this relativity. So even though you're having intense pain, there's no solid being there. The pain is intense, and it's abraded nerve endings. It's a synovial cyst in your L4 lumbar, which I just had last May. Not comfortable, painful, and the pain is relatively real. But ultimately it's unreal. But this doesn't mean that suddenly, because you realize its ultimacy, that you stop feeling it, because the very feeling itself is dependently arisen. So you can't have it. You can't have, how can I say it? You can't have banana cream pie without your blood sugar going up. It's kind of a personal image. I'm saying you can't have this and that, or the whole thing is connected together. It's to see that the fundamental situation is insubstantial or unreal, and is dependently risen and is impermanent. All compounded things come apart, but then also see that there's no personhood. It's an incredible being because of hope and fear. Because of that, we grasp at some kind of a being that must be going through this, or some person that can't stand this anymore. And we continue to miss seeing the impulse by trying to abandon the feeling, to use to abandon the feeling, to abandon the perception. Feeling shows up, form shows up, don't abandon the form. Shikantaza. Feeling shows up, don't abandon the feeling. And perception shows, don't abandon. Even the thinking process, don't abandon it. Just observe what moves, and discover your true nature. Go ahead, Chisho.
Chisho bowing. A person who has seen through seems to be straddling both the relative perspective and an absolute perspective. What is it that they use to do that straddling between the two? How do they go back and forth?
No, they don't have to straddle. They don't have to go back and forth, because relative truth and absolute truth are no longer two different things. Come on, drag it out of me. I want to say more about this, but I can't say it because I can't do anything by myself. I have to do it with you. So help me, help us. Give me a question that completely blows the top of my head off. Go ahead.
Yuhong bowing.
Go ahead, Yuhong.
Then how can we seek spiritual growth, though we know that's not the ultimate truth, as what you said? That's
the only way you can do it. If you do it any other way, my dear, it is spiritual materialism. What I'm talking, the question you're asking, I'm saying that's the only way you can do it. Because otherwise it turns into some kind of gaining idea, some kind of greed, or some kind of progress, some kind of getting somewhere. And Buddhism is full of all kinds of progressions. But you'll notice if you read them, they don't seem to lead anywhere. Like if you read the 12 or the 10 bhumis or the 11 bhumis or whatever, you read any kind of progression and you find that, gee, this seems like pretty much what was happening 3 bhumis ago, but then they'll stitch it together. Trungpa Rinpoche, I think in the Myth of Freedom, stitches the paramitas and the bhumis all together, so they make total sense. Not really. He doesn't do that. But it's a profound teaching to study anyway, to see the way relative truth can be used in such a way to work with that. And you could say even massage that area. So we begin to get some insight beyond the very concepts and ideas that are supporting the ultimate realization. We're not separate. You're not separate from me. I'm not, we're separated, but fundamentally not separate. That's why I was saying to Chisho, come and let's do this. I mean, come and ask me questions. And so that I can hear what I'm going to say, because I have no idea what I'm going to say. When you said it, so you're going to sing a Irish jig, or did you say that? Irish, yeah. I said, no, I don't want to torture anybody. I'm not going to do that. So,
Michael Bowing,
yes.
what is it that makes practice so important in this path?
Because when you practice, what you've done is you've slowed things down, the speediness of the mind of going here, going there, liking this, don't like that, I like this, I like that, I don't like that. Listen to what they're saying. What are they saying that for? Do you understand what they're, don't they realize how crazy they sound? Da, 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 da. And it's not just that, that's just part of what's going through the mind, you know. And there's quite often when we're walking through the house, we're not saying anything, but our mind is like a buzzsaw and you can't even count the teeth. It's going so fast. And the illusion of getting somewhere or getting nowhere, sometimes that's just as valuable. At least I know I'm not getting anywhere. So that reifies the person who's not getting anywhere. It's like that, there I go again person. Can't seem to get a leg up anywhere. This is never going to work for me. Spiritual path is not mine. I need to just paint houses or something else. Further, Michael?
So is it more important, this idea of slowing the mind rather than finding a peaceful place?
Yeah, you know, the problem with a peaceful place is you can find one, but it won't last. And then you get tied into trying to make it last because you got a pumpkin pie in the sky and it works pretty good. And then it starts to collapse because the compounded things, whether you put it together, anybody put it together, it comes apart. You're constantly doing your spiritual laundry. It gets dirty and gets dirty and gets dirty. You have to keep washing it and washing it. And then you talk to your other people who and say, I'm pretty clean. Are you clean? I don't know. How do you look? Oh, I'm pretty clean. You know, we always are looking to be to get rid of the three poisons, to get rid of passion, aggression, to get rid of those. That's a misunderstanding as far as I understand it. And you know, I might be talking to you know what, 30 I don't know, 30 some people tonight, and you might listen to me and go elsewhere next week. I don't know, but I'm not talking to you to try to capture you. I'm talking because this is how this looks. If you're interested in this, then that's why I'm still alive.
Ivan Bowing.
Go ahead, Ivan.
If we are during Chicken Taza, if we are to receive, we're watching the mind and we're receiving, it's all coming from us. So how can we receive if we already have it?
That's the only way you can do it. It just looks like other. It looks like something else. It looks like something new. It looks like something old. And also receiving as part of that is seeing how you can't quite receive it. It tends to get worse sometimes. Sometimes we go through a passage where just nothing is working. Our meditation practice is terrible. We can't even sit anymore. We might go for a week or 2 weeks or maybe longer. We just can't sit. I can't do it. I can't sit there anymore. And then, of course, nothing lasts. And especially the less you do with it, the more, the less length it will have. Do less, and therefore, because it gets its energy, it gets its propellant from passion, aggression, ignorance of an imputed or a believed self that wants that and doesn't want that. It's about the illusion of time. Are you familiar with Longines Wittnauer?
I am not.
They used to make clocks about 100 years ago. Go look them up.
Okay.
But I'm being silly. I'm just saying, but we think all right, it isn't that there isn't something like time, but it's not exactly the linear shish kebab that we think it is, one moment after another on a stick.
Jason Bowing.
Yes, Jason, go ahead.
So when you say that the ultimate truth and relative truth are not separate, do you mean that in the way that Catholics mean that that Jesus, God, and the Holy Ghost are not separate, in that really they are both separate and not separate?
You know, I've never been able to figure out what those guys mean, but I'm not a Catholic, so, and I have not practiced that, but maybe, I mean, they're mixing it up in different ways. So that, I don't know, the Holy Trinity. Yeah, go ahead, please. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I believe maybe you had mentioned an analogy of in the past of relative truth kind of being like clouds that get in the way of the sun, which is the ultimate truth. And so you would think of clouds as a thing, and you think of the sun as a thing, and one's getting in the way of the other. So they're both kind of there as separate things, but they're not also can not be separate at the same time. And this kind of sounds like what you're saying. So that's what I was asking about.
So
Are they both separate and not separate?
yes.
Okay.
But the thing you left out when you talk about the sun and the clouds is the sky.
Oh, it's the sky that is being obscured by the clouds. Is that it?
Yeah, it kind of is. But when you see it, then you see that the sky and the clouds. At first, you go through and see everything is empty. So you see that the clouds themselves are empty of any otherness. They're not something. They're not something else. And then eventually, it all comes back, and you realize that the clouds are the sky, and therefore they're clouds because they're no longer separate from their background. Just a way of talking about it. You know, there's all kinds of different ways of using metaphors and images. The Carl Brunholzl's book, Center of the Sunlit Sky, uses a little bit of that, which is a book that I studied a while back. I actually studied it with John Roadhouse, who is on here this evening and is a longtime friend of mine. Dharma brother. I have several Dharma brothers here and sisters. Further question, Shisho.
Shisho bowing. I want to go back to that straddling.
Okay. So that straddle rhymes with saddle.
Because previously when you were answering, I think Shodo, you were talking about relative knowing and not knowing being different from an absolute knowing or not knowing. And so that's where, for a person who's seen through, are they experiencing two kinds of knowings at the same time?
Yeah, I could see where you would say that, but actually there's no experiencer, therefore there's no experience. I'm not trying to get all exotic and difficult to even follow at all, but I'm just saying that fundamentally the identities of self and other are just not there. The same thing is here. There's still a coffee table, there's still some coffee, there's still an ache in your back, and there's still camel tracks in the snow. So it's not the same relative truth is somehow no longer there. You're in some kind of mystical realm. No, the gravitas of reality is intense and solid, and you are a solid being. And you actually can, as it says in the Zen tradition, chop wood, carry water. You can actually function completely, thoroughly, and with complete respect for everything. You can chop the wood, you can carry the water, and this is a Buddha nature. It is a dharmadhatu, and it is all those other realms, everything, the realm of truth, the realm of relative truth, everything is all at once, as it says in Kobin's translation of the Heart Sutra, falling apart, falling apart, falling. What's falling apart? Your attachment to relative truth. Relative truth is fine. It's the attachment, the belief in this and the disbelief in that, the desire for that and the wish or the hope that that will go away, the attachment to thinking that there's something to do. And it seems we have to do a lot of doing nothing before we're able to see that fundamental misunderstanding. So falling apart, the relative structure fall, and then it's at the end it's nothing to do, because there isn't any otherness happening. It isn't that you don't have dishes to wash or have to go out to the mailbox or something. Relative things are happening, but they don't have the kind of the polarity to them that they once had. Everything all at once.
Junshu bowing.
Yes, Junshu.
A question on YouTube from Natasha.
Yes, Natasha.
Whenever you answer questions, are they just your own opinion?
Damn right they are. Yeah. Well, who else are they going to be? You know, I may not know much, but I know what I know. Well, of course, there's some kind of a self-centeredness thing operating here. Otherwise, they can do this at all. But that which is holding the opinion or the idea or the conclusion that helps me actually make a statement about anything at all is to use the fancy word for it, is to meet people in the shit that they're mired in. If I just sing angelic songs or play Irish tunes, which I can't do, by the way, I would like to be able to, though, then that would be nice and it would be beautiful and it would be wonderful. But in order to teach the Dharma, one has to have understood it or practiced it and had a teacher, a teaching, and a community. Those three things seem to be difficult to do without any one of those. And so I guess you could say there's some opinions. Some things are going to show up like opinions, but I would invite you, and this is sincere. If you see a opinion I'm having, come and investigate. Ask me a question about why I'm saying something like, let's see, what's a good opinion I have? You should train the mind. That's a pretty good opinion. I would say, don't live another day. Don't go towards death comes without warning, without training the mind, so that when you do go back into the elements, your body does rather, and your consciousness is liberated from its attachment to a physical form, and you're wandering around in the intermediate state. I would say it might be a good idea to train your mind so that is not a surprise to you. It might be surprising, but it's fundamentally not a surprise. You knew this was coming because you've been looking at it on the wall day after day after day. Well, find out who you are. I guess you could call it an opinion. You could say, well, should I practice Judaism or Islam or Christianity or Buddhism, or what should I practice, or be a shaman, or should I just be an atheist, or should I be an agnostic? I said, I think it might be a good idea to practice the Buddha's Dharma. I guess that's kind of an opinion. I'm not saying I studied all of that, other approaches to the spiritual path, but I didn't exactly ignore them either. So I guess you could call it opinion somewhat. Go ahead, Shisho.
Chishabang. So this exchange. So when you're dealing with a student or somebody who is still living in the relative world,
yeah,
if you're going to meet them where they are, don't you have to then deal with the passion or aggression or the ignorance of the student?
Of course. Just like I don't know Natasha. I don't know. I may have met her, but I don't recognize the name. I think I know a few. Do I know anybody named but I need to be, and I mean this if she's still listening, which she may or may not be, but I need to be, if you're going to help anybody, you have to be very respectful of what you think or what you perceive is their confusion and what you perceive as their wisdom. The question shows her wisdom, but the nature of the question shows her confusion. Not a bad thing. It's just, it shows that she would need to ask the question. It shows that she's not really hearing what I'm saying. And is that my opinion? Yeah, damn right it is. My opinion. But it's not about never having any opinions. It's about seeing that something is an opinion and is grounded in a certain kind of understanding of relative truth, but you don't grab the wrong end of a knife and squeeze. You'll cut yourself. So make sure, because the handle of the knife and the blade of the knife are not two separate things. They just look like it. And they're so convincing that it's rare that you'll ever grab the blade of the knife. I know the metaphor might be a little vague, but I'm talking about meeting people where they're at. I'm talking about Natasha. And Natasha, as I said, Natasha's question that's a good question. She should come here for the next 3 or 4 weeks and ask me questions every day. I'd like to hear what I have to say about things like that. On second thought, Natasha, don't come back anymore. Your questions are too hard. No, I'm just kidding. You can do whatever you want. Please do whatever you want. Is that control? I'm not trying to control her. Please do whatever you want. I think I got her under my thumb. So that's what teachers quite often do, is they want to control you, seduce you. Sometimes the motivation is to fundamentally help you. And sometimes the motivation is to get followers and get power and be somebody important. I'd be very suspicious of anybody functioning as a Dharma teacher, including this guy.
You're bowing.
Go ahead, Yon.
If nothing is separate in terms of wisdom and illusion, is that possible to lower one and lift at the same time, lower one and lift the other one?
Well, the lowering and the lifting is not something. If you see what this is, there's nothing to correct. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to raise. There's nothing to lower. That being said, you still might have to practice to do. You have to get to the wall. You have to sit down, and you have to. It depends on the tradition, depends on the form, depends on the structure, depends on how that shows up. You still may have to supplicate the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 times. You still may have to chant the sutras. You may still have to ask those beings in the intermediate state to protect you. So it's not theism, because you are not talking to anything of an aspect of your own wisdom mind. Anytime you pray in this tradition, anytime you pray for help or supplicate for help, you're always talking to yourself. And if you're a Buddhist, then you're praying for others. I mean, you could be praying for yourself too, so you can continue to help others. But basically, it's prayer for others. May all beings be happy and at their ease. Everybody, even the socialists.
But at this moment, you always said that just take care of yourself, like work on myself, for example. When you mentioned that, see myself in others or help others, I feel like, I haven't really taken care of myself yet, how I could, even my children. So how I'm able to, but I just feel like it's not really an urgency for me to think that far yet, even though I do have the intention.
I think you're fine. I think, I think you're doing fine. Just get to the wall, spend some time training your mind. And here I'm biased. You could even say, from Natasha's point of view, I have an opinion. Do shikantaza, don't do Shine and Laktong, or mindfulness awareness, or Shamatha Vipassana. But I'd also say, if you want to do that, please go ahead and do that. Of the two, as Tisha said, keep the principal witness. You may need to do, I had to do creation completion practices for many, many years. Deity yoga, it's called. I had to do lots of that. I didn't start out by, well, I did start out by doing Chikantaza, and you could say I kind of returned to it. But it looks like I really needed to do those other practices. If someone comes this way and that looks like they need to do that, I can help. I'm not a lama, so they might not get that particular kind of credential from it. It's about the training. It's not about the particular imprimatur of the lama.
Bowing.
You're doing fine. Just continue. So you wouldn't ask me a question and then ignore what I said, would you? Okay. We got a deal then.
Yeah, it's just very hard, but I
And
definitely.
with the downside, this is really important. The downside of it being hard is it's hard. It's hard. And we know it's hard, but the upside of that difficulty means you're probably looking in the very area when you're meditating, when you're coming and doing joining the Sangha and studying the Dharma, however that may be, you're probably looking right in the area where your confusion is, or where your difficulty is, or where things are closed off, and you're beginning to look in there, and it can be challenging and difficult. Everyone here probably has some version of that, other than those of you who are already enlightened, of course.
Bye.
Thank you. One more question, if there is one, and if there isn't, then we'll.
Bowing.
Yes.
A question from Bobby in Florida.
Bobby. Yeah, go ahead, Bobby.
Is seeing ourselves and all other sentient and insentient in the universe as cells in a universal body a close enough description of no self?
Well, it's certainly a description, and it's certainly a description that addresses the conceptual idea of no self, but it's not realization. Realization, the concepts are to help you get in that direction, but at some point you're going to have to jump off the raft and swim to shore, because that raft can't even get close to the shore. And is it a shore? Not really, but we need to have something out there. A little bit. So don't misunderstand. I'm not saying don't use that or stop thinking about that. No, use that. Just realize that that's part of the path. There's a ground of suffering, difficulty, challenges, having suffering, and death comes without warning, and all of that. And then there's the path. And this is the path of awakened truth, Buddha, Dharma, taught by the Buddha 2,500 years ago, and still seems to be happening in different areas. It's a cumulative tradition, not a revealed one. No one came and revealed anything, but it's cumulative. So here we are, and I would say just keep going. And Bobby, if that idea serves you, if you need that kind of a structure, and I'm not saying you need something that other people don't need. Everybody has a different way of looking at it. I would say, if the way you're asking, the way your questions show up, I would say, read the Lankavatara Sutra, and read while you're at it, when you're through reading that, read all three translations that are out there more than once. And then when you get that done, read the Samdhi Nirmachana Sutra. I think there's 3 translations of that also. And I'm not just being silly. I'm just saying, if you like those concepts, people have been doing this all over the place for centuries and centuries, and I'm not a scholar. I can't really, I can somewhat, but like I was saying 20 years ago when I was studying this, Brunholzel's book, Center of the Sunless Sky, those concepts are very sparkly and very pointed and very exact and structured and pretty elaborate stuff. But it's an incredible description of the nature of ultimate reality as it relates to conceptual or relative reality, but it's not realization. The same thing with the Jeffrey Hopkins book or any one of the sutras. They're words on a page, and if they may help you, they may hinder you if you get too attached to it. Anybody want to hear a tune? I'm not playing it because I'm not about to embarrass myself any further. I've already done it in the last hour. So let's see. Is there anyone else here that's a musician?
No,
Oh, Carl's a musician. Carl, can you play
an Irish jig.
an Irish jig or an Irish reel?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. Carl's got his piano right there, or his keyboard. Go for it, Carl. Oh, what do you have there? A flute? Yay! Wonderful. So Daniel, isn't flamenco music very similar to Irish music? What? Come on, Daniel. I see you. I see your picture. I don't see you.
Is Mason's not here?
I couldn't find Mason. If Mason was here, I'm sure
He's
he
probably
was.
shoveling snow.
He might be
He's out there in
shoveling snow.
Boulder.
Did Daniel say anything? No? Daniel went to sleep. Well, I don't see Mason. Any other musicians out there that want to play anything? You don't have to play Irish music. You could play flamenco.
Kevin could sing.
Kevin, could you sing something?
I could. Any requests?
Yeah. Oh, Daniel replied, sorry, trying to get food in sick dog. Oh, that's Dash. I'm glad your Dash is slowly starting to get better, it sounds like, from the email you sent us. So good luck with him, Daniel. Thank you. Kevin, so what?
I'll sing you a Kirsty McCall song.
Okay, go for it.
You've been around for such a long time now. Maybe I could leave you, but I don't know how. And why should I be lonely every night when I can be with you? Oh, yes, you make it right, and I don't listen to the guys who say that you're bad for me and I should turn you away, 'cause they don't know about us and they've never heard of love. I get a feeling when I look at you, wherever you go now, I wanna be there too. They say we're crazy, but I just don't care. And if they keep on talking, still they get nowhere. So I don't mind if they don't understand when I look at you and you hold my hand, 'cause they don't know about us and they've never heard of love.
Yay! Wonderful, wonderful. So Carmen, you sing. Can't you sing something?
I've been coughing a lot today.
Oh, okay.
Wouldn't probably be, but I thank you.
Janis Joplin, she coughed.
Yeah, do Janis Joplin.
That'll make her cough.
Yeah, she'll cough even more. Okay, well,
Dedicate the marathon.
Dedicate the Marathon. That's always a good tune.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho san shi shi hu shi song bu sa mo ko sa mo ko ja ho ro mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokokoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, family, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering and fill them with light.